There's not a separate lecture for February 23rd. I think we will have time tonight to cover both classes, both what we would have done last Monday and then this. We will definitely, I shouldn't say definitely, no. We'll probably finish the March 2nd lecture, and if it's not, I'm in the wrong slideshow. If it's not too late, we get a start on the March 9th for next week. So now we're going to start working with specific interfaces and classes that you will use on a regular basis in our project. Two of the most commonly used interfaces are very often the two you'll start your program with, iApplication or iMX document. Very often, I don't say all the time, but a good majority of the time your code may start out with identifying these two objects. And these two objects are somewhat special in that they're already defined and accessible for you. And we'll see what that means in a second. The application object is one of these that's special. It's default already in use, and all you have to do is assign a variable to the keyword application without declaring it. That said, if we want to use a different, its default interface is iApplication. So if we want to use a different interface with it, then we'd have to declare it using a cast. The application object gives us access to the top level ArcMap application properties. So here's some of those. So this screen shows you the things an application does. It also is a review of casting we talked about before the break. So the default interface on application is iApplication. You can see some of these top level categories or properties and methods. The caption, the name, might say ArcMap, the status bar of the application, and so on, and whether a document is loaded or it's just untitled. These are some of the top level iApplication properties and members. Visual Basic Editor, that's deprecated. They don't have the VBA editor anymore. iMX application are some other application properties we can set and retrieve, such as what paper size the layout uses, what the default printer is, and so on. And to review the interfaces, notice these two variables are both set to the application keyword, but because the second application uses a different interface, you get the properties and members of that interface as opposed to this interface. Another object that you'll be using frequently would be MX document. It stands for the map document. Most often, as well, the iMX document default interface is used, and you can see the properties here. And you can get to it with the keyword arcmap.document. We'll do a demo in just a few minutes. So you can see the properties of an iMX document. Often the next step is this maps property, because often what you're doing is getting to the map document so you can get to the data frame, so you can get to layers in the data frame to do something with them. Focus map is a commonly used property of map document, and it returns the activated data frame as an iMap interface object, which is another heavily used one that we'll either start talking about this evening or first thing next Monday. We'll start back up, depending on how fast things go. And so there's other methods on MX document, like adding a new layer, try to add a new JS layer. Update contents is used to refresh the legend if you change symbology. You'll use update contents in Lab 3, where you'll render states and for those of you that haven't done Lab 3 yet, which is most of you. So you can also cast your MX document class representing your ArcMap document onto the iDocument interface for some additional members, such as lab title or math title. So I'm going to start up Visual Studio. Remember, I'm using 2012, so it'll look a little different, though the functionality is pretty similar. It's doing that. New project. We're going to create a desktop add-in. I'm going to call it March 2nd. Right? Yep. It's an ArcMap add-in. March 2nd will be the name of my add-in. And I'm going to add a button to it. Call it March 2nd button 1. Look at what icons we have available. Remember, I loaded these all on the M drive for you, for your use. By default, they're in that dev kit folder, which you can't access. It really makes no difference. Just pick that one. So we're going to create our Visual Studio add-in project. It comes up with the XML file defining the project, just to review. This tells us the author, the date, and so on. We talked about using the version control when you make a program update. You could use the version control to keep track of that, just like you have your ArcMap 10.2, 10.3, so on. Target is ArcMap. I'm using 10.3. And here this lists the buttons, or button in this case, that are in my add-in. So when I created the button, it creates a C# file. I guess I called it Buttoni. There's an I on the end there. This is where we would code against our button. But to review, I'll mention this every time, that we need to add references. By default, an add-in project has these 4 references in it, but I need to add a using statement into the button to tell us that we're going to use that library. So I'm going to type using ESRI, ArcGIS, ArcMap UI. I also know I'll probably need the Carto library, so I right-click References in the Visual Studio project, add ArcGIS reference, and I'll go Desktop ArcMap, Carto, Add. It shows up here, and I can tell the module here to use Carto. So in the on-click event from the button, I can start coding. Okay, I have to add. I didn't have to do that before. So we can get to the application with this. They're using the iApplication interface. So I'm saying I'm using the iApplication interface. I'm creating a variable called myApp, and I'm going to set it using this keyword arcmap.application. I momentarily relapsed to VBA, and VBA it was just application. I could also, so that gets reference to ArcMap in general. I can get a reference to the current document with IMX document. And then I can click My Doc to see what my options are, or my app. So for example, I could say now could add a reference to System Windows Forms. Didn't I just do that? Well. So one way to debug right in Visual Studio is click the Start button, and it will open up ArcMap. And I can go into customize mode, commands, there it is. And so there's the caption, untitled dash. So here's our first, our JS add-in that actually does something, though not much. And you can't see that because of the screen. But the caption of the application is what's depicted there, untitled ArcMap. I did something a little different in the slide. I showed the title of the document, which is almost the same thing, not quite. The next example, I do want to show this, and most of this topic we'll end up talking about next week. But the next thing often that you go into is this IMAP interface, which represents a data frame. in most cases, what you want is the activated data frame. So here there's two data frames. Layers and new data frame. But often the next step, you go from application to document. The next step will be get to a data frame because you want to access one of these layers. And in most cases, the way to get that is on the IMAP, on the .imx document interface is a property focus map, which I said will return the active data frame. And we can set that to the interface IMAP. So we can do that in a very simple sense to tell us which data frame is active. This type of operation will come in handy for you in Lab 2. Excuse me. So I'll comment out this. Name the active data frame. So this is just how it was described in the slide. I can get the focused or the active data frame with that property on the map document. So on the message box, it says the active data frame name is, and then the PMAP, don't forget the name property. That's an easy thing to forget. I see this done all the time, but I do it myself all the time. This is a reference to the object data frame. It's not the name of the data frame. To get the name of the data frame, it has a property called name. It's like the difference between you and your name. You are the object, the name is how someone refers to you when they call on you. Same thing here. PMAP name is the name of the data frame. The PMAP by itself is an actual data frame object. So you would get an error if you just had PMAP there. So in this case, PMAP is this data frame because it's active and it returns that. Versus now layers is the active data frame. So the eventual next step, I don't think we'll get into this right away, like maybe the first thing next week, is to then get the layers within it. But now we've gotten to the point already where you get to the application, get to the map document, and now we see how to get one step lower to the actual data frames that contain the GIS layers. For that, we'll talk a little bit about GUIDs, or Global User IDs. This isn't I think this comes up once or twice in the material. It's not a central topic, but something worth covering, I think. So I put slides in here. A GUID, or Global Unique Identifier, is a 32-character hexadecimal string that's stored as a 120-bit hex integer. Microsoft uses this to randomly assign a unique ID to every class it's ever created. So Esri's command geocode addresses has a unique, can also be referred to by this unique 128-bit hexadecimal integer. So this confounds people, but I think you can mathematically say it's a certainty. Every time you create something, you get a random GUID that's unique in the world, only to your button ever. So when I created this add-in, for that button, show it here. Like when I created this add-in March 2nd, it assigned this GUID to my March 2nd add-in. That's a unique GUID that will only ever be used ever in existence by me on this March 2nd program. That will never be reused. So the add-in has that ID. See, there it occurs again. I can't find it. It's in there somewhere. The button has a unique ID. And sometimes people will say, how do you know that? I guess you don't know for sure, but that will never be used again ever by any program. But if you look at the number of digits, there's the odds. Hexadecimal goes from 1 to 0 and then to H. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, A, B, C, D, E, F, H. So 16 possible choices for each one of these numbers. So if you did 16 by 16 by 16 by 16 and so on, the odds of a GUID repeating is 1 in this number. So I mean, it's always possible. It's like monkeys randomly type. You ever hear that randomly? Typing on a keyboard eventually in eternity would type out a Shakespeare play randomly, if you talk about infinity. But the odds of that are low. So when a GUID is created, the odds are 1 in this number that they'll be repeated. In other words, that GUID is completely unique. So each class having this code prevents scripts. It's a way to let them get access to the library directly. If you want to know what the GUID is for each object, you don't often need to know this, but you may come across it. If you go to ArcMap commands in the help, for every command you get the GUID. For example, menu, file. The file menu has that GUID in ArcMap. The command to create a new MXD has this GUID, and so on. And I said, more advanced programming topics, you would use these global unique IDs, but I wanted to make you aware of it, even though we'll use it lightly in this class. can also find the GUID that's created in your XML file, the add-nx, when you create an add-in. So sometimes, here's a case, I'm not going to go through an example, but here's a case where you might use a GUID. You may in some case want to find an existing tool and execute it, rather than writing your own code. If there is an existing tool that does what you need to do, like you're done with your going through code, you want the print box to come up. There's already code to bring up a print box. So you could just execute the print box. Here's how you would do that. You have, I'm just going to explain this, we won't spend too much time on it. You have this as a reference. There's an interface called iCommand bars that contains all of the built-in commands available. It's actually a property under the applications, under the document that we already looked at. And then we create a new UID class. Actually, this is an exception, not using an interface, unlike 99% of the time. So we create a UID object, and then you can assign it the 16 Hessel cut and paste so you don't create a typo. And then you can use the myCommandBars object to find the tool by its UID. And then once you've found the tool, make sure you found it by testing if it's not null when you execute the tool. There's just a little bit of code there that might help you out in executing an existing tool. So then we have just a few more slides. I think we'll just do these few more slides and break since it's almost 9:20. And then we'll actually be on schedule, actually start next weekend with the first slide in March 9th. Working with data frames, and I've sort of already given you a sneak preview of that a moment ago. So as we, just reviewing quick, we get to the MX document with this arcmap.document keyword. I just showed you that. I'm not in the right file. Remember when I typed that a few moments ago? Let's get to the MX document. Some of these slides I repeat. Did I go backwards or did I repeat slides? It's like I repeated slides. So we get to review. So as we saw a moment ago, we saw how you can use this code to get the data frame, the active data frame, once again. And then, as we saw on that slide, the focus map is assigned to an IMAP variable. An IMAP, as I mentioned a couple times, is a data frame. Here is a screenshot of map, the map class IMAP interface from the object model diagram. With the many interfaces that it uses, we're most often working with IMAP or iActiveView, which I think I put on the next slide, or a slide coming up. This is focused on IMAP, pun intended. But some of the common properties on IMAP that we use, we get the data frame name. You can use this to get the current map scale that the user has zoomed to with units. What features has the user selected on the map? Does it have a projection? And so on, things like that. Methods that we can use on IMAP would be adding and removing a layer, adding a new layer. You can rearrange map order, clear selections, and so on. You know, one important one that I don't mention at all, that really should be in this list, is getting to the layers. So you have a plural layers class that returns an enumeration of all the layers. We'll talk about how to work with ArcObjects enumeration probably after spring break. You can get a count of how many layers are in the data frame, and using an index you can get a specific layer. So map.layer 0 would give the top layer. It's a 0-based index. Map.layer 1 would return the second layer from the top. And one slight difference. Sometimes this is a C# thing. When you're retrieving something using an index, in the properties it'll say layer. But in actuality, in C#, the method is get _ layer. We'll see examples like that a lot. So notice I'm off by 1. For layer 2, I am getting the index 1, and for layer 1, I get the index 0. You'll see the result. Oh. I did what I warned you about. Remember, I just mentioned this. I'm getting the layer, not the name. So instead of saying layer 1 states, it actually says, it's a good way to demonstrate that. Layer 2 system, object. The way to handle that, what I should do is layer 0 .name. Layer 1 U.S. states, Layer 2 U.S. counties. So get layer is a commonly used property on map. I mentioned another interface that's often used with map. The data frame class is iActiveView. We use iActiveView to get the current map extent, where is the user zoomed into, to get current selections, or to zoom the map out to full extent. The other things we use ActiveView for would be automatically activating that data frame using code, or redrawing You don't have to explicitly do that when you're using ArcMap. When you make a change, it automatically redraws. But when we're programming and the user makes a change, you have to tell ArcMap to redraw. And the way to do that is this refresh method on the iActiveView interface that forces the data frame to redraw. To get a list of maps, and this is all Lab 2 stuff, there's a property maps. Another easy thing to mix up when programming is the plural versus singular. Often, like, there's a property map and a property maps. It's very easy to cause a typo by doing one or the other wrong. MX document has a property called maps that returns an iMaps interface, which is a list of all the maps in the data frame. And you'll use iMaps in Lab 2. iMaps has two properties: counting the number of data frames, and then this item lets you retrieve a specific data frame. Maps item 0 would return the top data frame. Maps item 1 would return the second data frame, and so on. So in this example, we're getting each individual data frame from the map document, looping through and showing a message box. I don't think we need to click through that. That's the final slide here. You'll do something like this for Lab 2, where you'll loop through all the data frames and build a list of layers. So you can build a menu for the user to display data frames and layers. Is that the last one? I think we'll end here, and we will pick up with more talking about maps and layers next Monday. Everyone have a good evening.